right. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, the bell button, and all that stuff. We'll get to that later. But my name is DJ Eshelman, and welcome to THRIVEcast. It's a joy to have you back with us once again. And I keep hitting the wrong button. That's just not going to be a good start to the day. But we'll just keep going with a nice cup of coffee. Oh, yeah. That's hit the right button juice right there. Good to have you with us. If you would go ahead and hit that like button as well. We appreciate that. That helps YouTube figure out that we're not just a bunch of kooks, although we kind of are a bunch of kooks. So, I mean, there's that. So welcome, Jeff. Welcome back.
Thank you. Hey, we're starting off better than last week, where, we couldn't talk, or I could not talk to
yeah, that's true. Like no audio at all. Yeah.
It was just all, so this is infinitely better. You pressing a wrong button, I'll take that any day.
Well, we'll just try and minimize the wrong buttons. But yes, definitely welcome. And if you have a comment or a question along the way, feel free to put that in. Please note there is about a 30-second delay between when you type it in and when we actually see it. That's because we're streaming live, so the YouTube has to kind of catch up. And so if you comment on something, just give us a little bit of context, say about this, or yeah, it was cool you said this, or whatever. It helps us out a lot. But let's bring on our guest. He is, there's so much I can say about Jarian Gibson. He's just an amazing guy, and I'm glad to have him with us. Not only working now for Nutanix, Citrix CTP, has been very involved with the EUC community. He started the World of EUC. We have a link to that down in the description. That's a Slack channel you can join for free. Join us. There's a lot of people in there giving a lot of great advice. I poke in there myself every now and then, just when I'm having trouble with something or feel like helping somebody else. So definitely that. Also, the Frontline Chatter podcast will be starting again soon, so we'll be talking about that. But let's bring on our friend Jarian Gibson. How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Yeah, it is a good morning, isn't it? Any day with coffee and good conversation is a good day, in my opinion. But
especially adult conversation, because most of mine has been kid conversation. So
right, yeah. So yeah, it's good stuff. So Jarian, you're in the Kansas City area now.
Correct. Yeah.
You didn't always live there, right?
No, I've had a traveled life, I would say. So I was a military brat. So my dad was in the Navy, and I'm the youngest of 5. So just think about my older siblings, how much they moved before I was born. But started off in California, moved to Virginia, back to California, Alabama, Nebraska, Omaha. So I spent most of my life in Omaha, probably from about the 5th grade until about 25 was in Omaha, Nebraska. And so I still have some family there, but the rest of my family is more spread out. And then I left Nebraska, started consulting. So Austin, Texas, Chicago, Illinois, back to Austin, Minneapolis, and then Kansas City. So I've been here about 10 years. Yeah, about 9-10 years now in Kansas City area.
And I thought my path was crazy. That's that tops it.
You have gone north to south more times than anybody else I've known.
Yeah, I can say I've driven from both East Coast to West Coast and north to South Coast as well.
Yeah,
going from Minneapolis and Minnesota is just that's extreme.
Yeah, and I can tell you one thing though.
I actually went to school in Hastings, Nebraska, and so I was there.
Not too far out. Yeah.
So that's kind of random. So that's cool.
I believe you went to school in Lincoln. So
cool. Yeah. So that was a long time ago. Yeah, I'm kind of still in denial that college was 20 plus years ago for me. That's
yeah, about the same here. So yeah, and I just turned 42. So
all us old guys. Yeah. So it's all good. Well, I'll tell you what, Jarian, why don't you walk us through like how you started in information technology, or did you have another career before that, or did you start right into consulting? How did that work?
So I've kind of always been into computers since a young age, probably. And so probably around the 5th grade, I really started getting into computers, started messing around with building computers. Started off in the DOS 5062 Windows 3.1 days.
Yeah.
And then kind of got into just building computers and building out from there. I think the first one I built myself was a 386. And then kind of got into gaming, a lot of first-person shooters. Some of all the Nintendo games, like the Mario stuff and the Zelda stuff in those days. But really always was in computers, helping out people build computers, fixing computers. Junior high and high school, I took pretty much any kind of tech or computer class that I could at the time.
Sure.
And then just always stayed with computers. From there, I went to school briefly. When I went to school, I went to college. Probably went for the first year, then dropped out. It was kind of like I was bored, honestly. Yeah. When you're going to school, learning the basics, and you've been building computers for years, having to go through all that basic stuff, and it kind of was boring and unfulfilling. So I dropped. I'm a college dropout. I'm not ashamed of it. I'll admit it. But it just wasn't for me. So from there, I started working at a company called Intercom in Nebraska, and building computers to customer specs, loading the OS on them, putting the peripheral devices in them, and so forth. From there, got a job at a brokerage firm in Omaha and started off as tech support. And then with the way the company was, it was based out of Omaha, but they had remote employees all over the country. And so they were doing dial-up and VPN. And I was tasked to find a better way for them to work remotely. So looked at, Windows 2000 with terminal services, looked at MetaFrame 1.8 on Windows 2000. And that's kind of how I got my way into working with Citrix, was finding that solution. Then became an administrator, worked with Citrix through a couple versions, I think up to Presentation Server 4.0, so XP 4.0. And then from there, I kept trying to roll Citrix company-wide to everyone. And my boss at the time was like, you need to go do some kind of consulting work. He goes, you're not going to be happy here long term. So he's like, I'll give you any kind of glowing recommendation you want. Wrote me a letter, and then started consulting. And that's where I started moving from, my whole move around story, Nebraska, Texas, Minnesota, Chicago, all over the place. And worked for MTM for a couple of years, I think about 5 years. Did about 5 years at Choice Solutions. Once I moved here, got to know the Choice Solutions family, and was very happy to work with them, and still, talk to them a lot. Went on my own for about 4 to 5 years, and then I got convinced to join Nutanix, and I've been here the past just over 2 years now at Nutanix. So it's been kind of a fun journey, going from the customer side to the consulting side to the partner side, and now on the vendor side.
That's crazy how that works, isn't it?
Yeah.
So along that line, first of all, I find it really interesting that somebody saw that you were the kind of personality type that would be better suited to like more of a consultative type of approach. Do you think that was just because of a sense of, like you mentioned, kind of being, moving around a lot, or do you think that was more of just there was something that they saw about you, your personality wise, that said, you're probably going to be better in that? What do you think that was?
I think it was more kind of the personality wise, just because I kept trying to do things and write proposals and, try to make own designs for stuff and see, this is how we can do it and stuff. And he kept encouraging me to keep doing it and, kept trying to get approved, but it was something at the time that they were looking to do. It was more of a remote worker solution. So he goes, you just have that mentality of doing things and building things. So, he's like, you're welcome to stay here, but, I think you should check some things out. And, and at that point, I think I was in Nebraska about 15 years, so probably got the itch again to move around. and so I did.
You made it 10 more years than I did. So
yeah.
Outstanding. Cool. Well, okay. So I guess I get what it's like to work for various types of people, but I'm not sure everyone else in the audience would necessarily understand like some of the differences, like you mentioned, between kind of going from a, somebody that's in the cubicles at a company versus working for a reseller, working for a vendor. What do you think what some of the big differences are? Like you said, from a personality standpoint, what kind of things are different that you can call out that might help someone kind of determine what a good path might be?
I think that the biggest thing is from working, at one company versus going into a reseller consulting type role is, do you like the sense of adventure? Because typically when you're at on the customer side, you're going to pretty much see the same environment. Yes, you're going to go through refreshes of hardware, upgrading the software, changes as requirements change, as technology changes, but you're pretty much in the same environment the whole time. If you want to get out there and see other environments, work with different people, have changes of scenery, I think that's where the biggest change will be coming from. Also, to kind of a different set of things you'll have to learn too, because instead of just learning one environment and one customer's needs and challenges, you're learning a lot more. Also, too, coming from the reseller side, ongoing education and learning as technology evolves is important in any path you choose. But the biggest thing will be that if you go into the reseller partner side, that certifications piece is key, because they have to have some requirements to keep certain statuses with the vendors that they're partners with. So
we get all certifications.
And I say I haven't probably touched certifications in 6 years now, since I've gone from the independent side and then into the vendor side.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something else to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah. I think we all know. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, and there are certain certifications that are good. I mean, like you look at the high-end Cisco certifications, what is it, the VMware VCDX or whatever it is.
Yep.
Those are first class, real world certifications. The rest of them are just they're there to put. Yeah.
I think any of those higher end ones that kind of make you go through a lot of steps, do a design, build a design, defend your design, get the core pieces at the bottom. You mentioned like the VCDX type stuff. Nutanix has a similar one called the NPX. Even the old Citrix one where you had to go through and actually go to a break fix lab. Those type of certs are really great because they give you not knowledge, but it kind of gives you more hands-on real world type experience versus just sitting there and doing multiple choice, multiple guess, true false type question test. So, and don't get me wrong, certs are important, to get the base, especially if you go through and take the time to actually learn what you're testing on. But a lot anymore of the lower end certs, people just want to get them done for requirements, so they're not always learning. They're more paper smart than hands-on in the field smart.
And a lot of it is business requirements. So I mean, you look at somebody's email signature, right? And it's got 20 different certs after it.
Alphabet soup.
No way that person is proficient in each one of those. So it's just a business thing that the company had them go through to keep up for whatever support or partnership
status level.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, and I get it, the certification thing. What's unfortunate is like when it's listed as like a requirement and people can't see past that. That's a good indicator that you might not be in the right place. But a lot of times I'll see that confidence in having a cert. I think that actually helped me a bit when I first got the like CCEV, for example. That actually was a bit of a boost as far as, okay, yeah, I guess I really do know this stuff, which is ridiculous because I had already worked for Citrix Consulting for several years. But it was a weird like little boost thing, but like you're saying, like the main reason I did it was because it would help the reseller that I was working for at the time.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
time changed as well from when, I mean, there was a time where certs were important, I guess, more important than what they are right now. Not that they were necessarily, they meant anything more than what they do right now, but not everybody was taking, I mean, it wasn't, and then it became like you'd have the Microsoft boot camp, you'd have those boot camps.
Yeah.
6 days, you'll get your MCSE, and that's when it started, I guess, kind of going downhill.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And so, but there are still good certs out there. You just, you may have to go through the others to get to those, but if you get those big ones, it's well worth the time and effort.
Oh, it definitely is.
Great stuff from a career standpoint.
I'm not downplaying certs at all. It's just that I've seen lately, like you said, that certs have changed. I also see it's more of a revenue stream now with certs and saying, hey, you can get recertified by just taking this $2,000 class instead of taking the test. And it's like that kind of changes the way I view certs in my eyes.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I absolutely feel ways about that, but but yeah, it's kind of one of those things where it's just like I just don't want to see that stifling like how people are learning. If they're learning, and I'll say that I get this all the time. I'll get emails or chats or whatever, Slack messages asking me about what certs there should I get or things like that. And the thing I always ask them is like, well, what's your goal?
Yeah.
What's the thing you need to work on the most here that's actually making you want to get the certification? And if they can't answer that, then I say, well, then no. It's like
and I think like the majority of certs, right? And yes, Nick, this actually, I started this because of a conversation last week where I was the only clean shaven one.
Yeah,
and
thanks to Tobias Bridle and myself. Jeff is now growing a beard.
Nice.
So not to rain on your parade, Nick, but he is actually finally working on it. So let's encourage him in that.
Beard oil is your friend.
Maybe I could get as good as Joe Shocks was at the point during COVID, man. That was that was glorious.
It was glorious.
But I think for young kids, God, I can't believe I just said that. Young kids getting into the industry, I think certifications do help with that. You know what I mean? Because it shows that they're putting forth effort. They were able to learn. Those types of things. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. All I wanted was to make sure it didn't come in like the Cliff Clavin, if anybody gets that reference.
Patches.
Absolutely.
And then I have to super glue.
Yeah, Nick says he's with us on the journey, and he is growing his rainbow beard from his picture. But no, I'm kidding.
I think for new people getting into the industry, whether it's out of college, and you gotta pick the right ones, right? I mean, if you're a developer, I don't know that a cert's going to help a dev. You got to be out there developing. There's a million.
Yeah.
But if you want to jump into consultancy or something like that, yeah, it's worth the time to get those certs because they will be looking for those things. And if you can come with them, and you can show that you're able to, pick up the concepts and learn, and you're a self-starter, you're going to get hired right away. So
yeah, it definitely shows that your self-initiative. It definitely helps you get a foot in the door. Yeah. But like you said, the important thing is what area you're going into. Like I said, a developer may not want to have a bunch of certs. They may want to have a portfolio of things they've done. products they've built, websites they've created, those type of things.
Yeah. Actually, funny story about that. So, and this will translate with the video. So pretty recently I was asked for, certifications and things like that. And I went, none. It was one of those personal things. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is not somebody I need to be working with, but that's just a me thing. So your personality might be different than that.
And even with the whole cert thing, the whole cert thing too goes back to college. Even do you need to go to 4-year college? Do you need to go to 2-year college? Do you need to go through some technical vocational school?
Yes.
And that's one thing my wife and I talk about a lot with our kids. Saying like you don't have to get. Depends what you're doing. It's like if you want to go, be a mechanic or be an EMT, go through the proper training. You don't always have to go through a 4-year school. And a lot of times with these 4-year colleges, your first 2 years anyway is a bunch of requirements. Anyways, you don't really get to your major until the last half of it. My wife has a 4-year degree. I don't. So, like I said, she's in social services and I'm in technology. So we took different paths.
Yep, absolutely. And the only reason I have a degree is because when I went back. I mean, I didn't complete it until mid-30s or something. I started out in accounting and then moved into IT, and then I just kept getting great jobs and going up, and it just never was an issue. And then for me, it was more of I started it, I want to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like a year and a half away from finishing, but it has never come up. I mean, from the standpoint of, we were going to hire you, but you didn't have the degree, or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it just
that's only happened a couple times.
Trade schools nowadays, why go into college debt?
Exactly.
Right. If you can get a great career as an electrician or a mechanic or whatever, and those are the jobs that simply aren't going to go away. I mean, they're not going to be replaced. So those are perfect for this time.
And that's a great point. Like as far as like early career, if you really want to start getting ahead, there's two things you can really do, and that is, well, learn obviously, but have a lab that you're working in, so you get hands-on experience with this stuff, and you can actually do that. And people like, oh, I can't afford a lab, is like, I bought these little Intel NUCs that make a great little like mini lab. It's affordable enough, or you can do it on your own computer or whatever. It's that these are just excuses you're using. But the other thing is certifications are a good way to get around that. If you're wanting a job where there's usually a degree requirement, it's about finding the right person to talk to.
Exactly.
If you're talking to the HR gatekeeper and they say you're not qualified because you don't have a degree, odds are good there's somebody else you can talk to. Odds are really good.
I remember one of the things early in my career, the same boss I worked for in Omaha, he said, I'd rather have someone, who's had hands-on experience than someone coming out of college with a 4-year degree that has to relearn everything, because the difference from what they learn in school versus what you learn being hands-on and being in the field. So, don't ignore having real-world experience as something that, that's not good, because it is, because you already have been in the field. You've already, you don't have to worry about how you're going to interact with customers or other people. You've already seen real-world scenarios, not simulated scenarios that could be out of date. Because that was one of my problems with going to college, was everything I was learning was out of date. I was like, I've already been doing this stuff. It's always, I'm already, you're doing Windows 95 class. I'm already working on Windows 98 and looking at what's next and looking at Linux and that kind of stuff. So I'm just like, this is boring.
You went to me, didn't you? You went straight to me.
What's that?
You went straight to Millennium Edition, didn't you?
I'm just here to learn about me. Sorry.
No, and you're right, because college, especially in tech, tech changes. We've all talked about this.
Yep.
It changes so fast that if you're going through a 4-year, they're going to be behind. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast.
Even a 2-year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, actually, this is another. I love that you brought that up, Jeff, because this is something where I find this as a gap in mindset about learning in technology, and that is I'm here to learn the tech. I call BS. If you're going to learn the tech, you're going to be obsolete before you're done learning. Before you get that cert, before you get that certificate that says you're done, you're already obsolete. This world moves way too fast in technology. If you're not learning the concepts and kind of the core why something is what it is, you're wasting your time. My thought.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
It's a constant learning situation. I mean, you can't stop. If you do, you're going to get left behind. I mean, I know I bring this up way too much, but I mean, exchange administrators fighting Office 365.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, there are still exchange admins out there, but let's be realistic. There's not a lot of them anymore,
right.
And they fought moving to the cloud, and it's because they were niched right in as an exchange admin.
Mm-hmm.
That's DJ, you and I have talked about it. You have to be able to stretch your wings.
Yep.
And Jarian, you're a great example of that. I mean, you're working for. I know they don't. Nutanix doesn't call themselves a hardware company, but I mean, it's very different than I know you're on the EUC side, but still, you have to know the storage and Prism and all those concepts now that you've touched on in the past, I'm sure, because we all have to some degree when working with Citrix or RDS. But now you've got you got to expand your knowledge and be able to pull that in. It's just it's just the way this field works. Things change too fast.
You kind of got to be more of a generalist now than a specialist anymore, because with all the moving parts, with so many things, especially EUC, because you're touching the endpoint, you're touching the network, you're touching the server side, you can be touching the storage, all other things too as well. So being more of a generalist than being a specialist is more needed. I remember John Smith, who used to be a CTP, he gave a great talk at one of the last in live Geek Speaks that we did, where he had a session about being a generalist. And I was like, that right there anymore. And he was correct, because you have to learn all these different moving parts, understand performance, troubleshooting, all these areas you have to touch, especially in the EUC world, because usually it's like, you got to find the problem and go to that area and describe what the problem is to even get them to look at it. So, if it's a network issue, you have to understand and improve the networking, understand traces, reading those, that kind of stuff, and be able to take that and say, look, it's your problem, fix your stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I tell people all the time how I actually got hired to be part of Citrix Consulting had nothing to do with my Citrix experience. It had everything to do with what I knew about Active Directory. I mean, if that literally was in my interview. They're asking me all these questions about group policy, and I'm like, wow, this is easy stuff. This is okay. Yeah. And the reason they were impressed is because everybody else they were talking to didn't know anything about that. And I'm like, that does not make for a good field consultant for sure. It's kind of one of those weird things. So our friend Mike says, did a 4-year work study degree in Canada, and work study is a very different type of a thing than what we're doing. So that's fantastic. It's great. Left college with one plus year hands-on Novell administration experience, which, as we all know, is really valuable today. Kidding. But
back then it was though.
It totally was though. It's back in the day that was especially with Novell. I don't know if you guys found that too, is having that experience and that hands-on. But it kind of shows me too, like one of the things that one of my professors said in college that was the most valuable thing that was ever said to me was, look, you're not here to learn. You're here to learn how to learn.
Yep.
That's huge.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I love what Mike pointed out there, because that work study is a key thing, he said, in getting that 1-year experience. See, programs like that, where it's kind of like I would almost call it an apprenticeship.
Yes.
That would be great. Those type of programs would be great, but just a traditional 4-year school, probably not.
Well, yeah, honestly, it's like, I wish there was more like that. And I was really sad that I missed Mike Rowe's talk at the end of Next. I really was. I've seen a few kind of like highlighted words out of that, and you know that I hope there's a replay because I really want to see that. But that stuff rings true in technology more than we think. You know, that there are, just like in a lot of blue collar areas, there's a lot of things that are just not worth, you know, doing if you're not learning how to learn this stuff and learn how to not apply what you're learning, apply the fact that you learned to learn other things and constantly grow. Like Jeff was saying, you always got to be improving and growing for sure.
Yeah, and like Jarian said, that's one of the reasons why I've always loved EUC, SBC, whatever you want to call it, you know. But it is because it touches so much. You know, people, you say EUC, oh yeah, you work with Citrix. Well, yeah, I work with Citrix, and I work with about 30 other technologies that go around it. You know? So it's yeah, you've got, yeah, I'm not an expert in all of them at all, but you know, I've got the experience on working on all of them. Right. You know, that's hard to do at times, because you got people looking for certain requirements, you know, certain positions to fill. Like you get into the large organizations, you're an Active Directory administrator. Yep. You are, you know, it can become very segmented, and you, that's like your spot, and that's what you do, which also makes it very hard when you're consulting to try to get stuff done at times. But yeah, you know, it's so if you're, and I know we've talked about this before, but yeah, if you're ever stuck in a position like that, not stuck, wrong word. But if you are in a position like that, you do want to make sure that you are educating yourself on the side, so that when the time comes, you want to go look for another job. Yep. Your whole of experience isn't just I managed 80 group policy or whatever, you know. So
yeah, and I'll also say that one of the things that I've noticed recently is certain gaps, you know, and soft skills is something. About 3 years ago, whenever I was at a site doing consulting work, I would usually pull the manager or whoever aside and start asking questions like, what are you seeing as the gaps, you know? And things like documentation constantly came up. I mean, almost every single time, you know, having a quality system in place, or, you know, people just personal skills is another thing that came up all the time. I couldn't believe it. Like, I'm saying that I'm being completely facetious. But honestly, it's like, these are things that if you want to advance, especially in a company, these are absolutely necessary. So it's like, that's the other side of things. So okay, you got a job. Okay, great. Do you want to keep that job forever? Or you want to grow? If you want to grow, you really need to focus on these other things that they really need from you. So yeah,
completely agree.
Good stuff. So Jarian, tell us about, because I know the applications for Citrix Technology Advocate, Citrix Technology Professional are up again this year. Maybe walk us through a little bit of your journey. We've already heard, like, you know, Jeff's journey is my journey. So walk us through your journey with becoming a CTP and all that.
Yeah, so mine was just I was in the forums a lot of the time, and just always answer a lot of questions in the forums and stuff. Started blogging. And then kind of started speaking at events. You know, I'm kind of big on trying to pay it forward in community. I know there was at one point, even, you know, I think Twitter helped me out a lot too, because there was like one time I tweeted like, up for a weekend in Chicago, visiting some friends and blah, blah, blah. And then Sean Bass hit me up. He's like, hey, I see you're in Chicago. Do you want to grab a drink or something? And so I met him for a drink, and that was just like, you know, boom, 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 boom. That was like a very high-paced, fast-paced, you know, high conversation with him. And I was just like, wow. I knew he was very smart and already knew about him, but just talking to him in person, even took that to another level. And he's just like, you know, you should apply for the program. He goes, I see you in the forums. I've seen some of your blogs and that kind of stuff, you know. And then him and I kind of became friends and stuff, and then gone from there. And Sean also helped me out when I went independent too, also. So I've always been in the mentality of kind of paying that forward and helping others. But, if you want to get into any community programs, whether it's Citrix or VMware or whoever, even Nutanix, start working with technology, start blogging about it, get in the forums. If you're finding gaps in the products, leave feedback, try to reach out to people via Twitter, or if the website has any kind of feedback mechanism, leave feedback that way.
Yeah.
But it's just, just be about community. My goal wasn't really to become a CTP. I was just, trying to help others. And then that was a happy side effect of it.
Yeah, makes sense. And that's really important to note. It's sort of, well, it's sort of like saying anybody who wants to be president probably is not going to make a good president.
Yep.
It's probably across the board. It's like, there's certain things. It's like, it's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot that is part of that. And, it's kind of one of those realities. Like, if that's your goal, your ambition, the odds of that happening are a lot lower. But if it's something where it's a natural fit or a natural progression, that's a totally different thing. Yeah,
I agree. So, be more about the community than the programs that you're shooting for. It's pretty much my advice for that. Like, I'm big on the CUDC community. And so just being involved with that, helping out other groups, help run the group here in Kansas City, and just interacting with the groups. And that's why, World of EUC is one thing that you mentioned in the intro that myself and 3 others started, Dave Brett, James Kingdom, and Ryan Reward, just to interact with the community, because everyone's got different experiences, different problems, and it's always, good to interact with those, to kind of see their angle of things, other people's angles, and it also helps you kind of learn too, like, oh, I didn't think about this, do it this way or that way. So, just having those community conversations is what I'm in it for. So.
Yeah, and I think people need to realize sometimes that it's not like this exclusive thing where it's just for the elite or something like that. This is something where everyone should be contributing. That's
yep.
Like kind of that rising tide lifts all ships kind of thing. It's
exactly
really, like, the more we can contribute in our own unique ways. And that's the other thing, is like, just emulating what someone else is doing doesn't really add. But if you can add your unique perspective and way to work with things to a community, everyone wins.
Yep. And that's how you meet people and branch out too. So I've met both of you through the community. I've met others. I've got friends all over the world now instead of just in my area, just from being in the community. And that's some of the things I really love too, just be able to meet people of different backgrounds, different cultures, and so forth. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put this up. If anybody has a question they want to ask any of us, just a quick reminder, go ahead and put it in the chat. We're absolutely happy to answer those questions. But now I was kind of curious about the World of EUC thing, because there's 2 things. One, it was like a convergence of several things. So maybe talk to us a little bit about that and how that even, because I hate that this is still a thing, but there's still like these battle lines, or like these kind of almost political kind of fronts between various elements of EUC. And so World of EUC was a way to bring those all together. And I really love that. How did that come about? Like, all these different worlds kind of converging.
So it was more of the couple of us that run it kind of came together and be like, like, I know Ryan and James were very big on the FS Logic Slack channel they had out there. Dave had his monitoring tool that he did, the EUC monitoring tool.
Yep.
I was very big in Citrix IRC channel.
Yep.
And so, we're talking, it's like, hey, what's a good way that we all can talk together and bring multiple people together instead of having to do all these different avenues. So we said, why not join forces? So the first 2 things we brought into World of EUC was FS Logics and the EUC. Later on, things like the NetScaler one, I believe, came in, and then the LabRats one, and then some other community tools as well, like the PowerScale and Citrix IRC. We also brought into the fold, and this has grown from there. So it's a good way for people to react or to interact with each other and have kind of a centralized area instead of saying, hey, go here or go there, or try to find someone on Twitter or email back and forth. And then from there, we kind of expanded to add Discord as well. So for those of you that that prefer Discord over Slack, all the channels are mirrored into Discord through a bridge that we use. And that's how we pulled IRC in as well. So you can join via Slack, you can join via Discord, or if you just want to stay in the core IRC, you can do an IRC channel for Citrix. So
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, Discord is one of the newer ones. It's not very publicized, but people are using it. So
that's cool.
I think that's one of the keys too, is that it's not just Citrix.
Yep.
VMware, WVD, all the EUC, World of EUC. It literally is everything. So
yeah, it started off more Citrix based, and then people said, "Hey, what about VMware channels?" And we started, branching out. Hey, what about like Uber Agent, or what about some of the Microsoft 365 and Intune stuff? So we all just kind of branched out. There's a Parallels one. So pretty much, we kind of keep things in general channels first, and if there's enough chatter, we start breaking things out. So just request a channel, and usually we'll say, "Hey, it's already there. I'll use this for now." If we see a lot of chatter, we'll go to a separate channel. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, talk to us about what it's like working at Nutanix. Like, what kind of things are you doing on a either yearly, monthly, weekly, daily basis? What kind of stands out to you about like what and you'll have to forgive me because I'm blanking on your exact title. It's not just like a like a SE kind of role. What you have a different title, right?
Yeah. So I started off as a senior solutions architect. I'm on the engineering team. And then recently I got promoted to a staff solutions architect. And so within that role, we were part of the core engineering team. And then once we had the acquisition of Frame, instead of having two separate EUC areas, we kind of became one EUC team. We're still separate because all the engineering that we're on is still more of Citrix and VMware, and all the non-Frame stuff is within our team. And then Frame still has their separate engineering team. So we're one EUC team, but we still have two separate avenues still. And so what we do in that daily basis is things like, it's a lot of testing, a lot of testing out the solutions. We do a lot of performance testing. My counterpart, Sven, is, like a ninja, like basically keyed in to doing all the performance testing that we do. I do a lot of the functional side of the testing. And things that we do is anytime there's a change. So we release a new version of AOS, AHV, Windows 10 version changes. So there's virtual apps and desktops changes a version, Horizon changes a version. We go through and test it and make sure there's no impact in performance on our architecture. And if there is, we figure out why. If an improvement needs to be done, we go to like the other engineering team to say, "Hey, we saw this, this needs to be fixed, and so forth." Testing the integration things, like I've been a lot of stuff in my role. I mainly cover the Citrix side of the house. Right. I do get pulled into other stuff, but it's mainly Citrix focused that I do. And a lot of things I've been working on lately has been on our cloud solutions. So the first part was our Zyleap cloud managed service, disaster recovery. And then the past few months, it's been our clusters announcements. And the things we do from our testing, whether it's on AHV in your data center, on clusters, on Horizon, whatever solution that we're working on, from that comes a reference architecture guide. So we build those out too. So a lot of the collateral you'll see from VMware or Citrix, that comes from our team. Other things too is, like I said, integration. So I've been working a lot with our files team to get more EUC centric features for things like FS Logics and app layering and profile management. So that's a lot of our core things. Cases are who's our manager, our lead. He kind of has enabling the field, our testing, our three things that we have there for our pillars of our team. And then we always work together and get those things done.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it sounds like not a lot of like direct customer relationship stuff, which is a little bit different than what you were doing before, right?
Yeah, so I'm mostly on the back end since we're engineering side, but we do get pulled into customer things. So like, for example, if there's a specific thing like they want to go really deep into Citrix sometimes, or have specific questions or an issue, we'll get pulled into it. Sven will get pulled into it, Case will. So we do work with customer side. So that's probably one part of the things we do. But a lot of our stuff is more on the back end, doing the testing and the documentation and that kind of stuff.
So like you said, a completely different kind of thing than having to just, be kind of in front of customers in that, like, let's build that relationship and then, see if this is a good fit for the product kind of thing. This is more of, they already have it, they just want to get the most out of it. It sounds like.
Well, and I'd say let's not downplay the other half of it, which is the internal communication that I'm sure you have to go through. I mean, when you do find issues and you got to bring that up, there are ways to bring issues up, rightly and wrongly. And you have to be able to figure people out, and once you figure them out, how do they like to be approached if there's an issue, that is on their side of things, or, whatever the case may be. How do they like to work together, not together, whatever the case may be, so that it goes back to that, the skills of being able to interact and talk with people. And as I'm sitting here stuttering, those skills are important, whether, it's not just customer facing things. It's very much internally as well. And being able to pull together various members of various teams, we always joke, but it is very much true that if there's a problem, let's say there's a users are experiencing a Citrix issue, everyone's going to point right back to Citrix. It doesn't matter if, storage, network, whatever, everyone's going to point back at you until you determine. But if you've got good relationships with people in those teams, it makes life so much easier in getting to the bottom of where those problems lie. Maybe it is Citrix, maybe it's network, maybe it's storage. But if you can develop those relationships, you will not be alone in trying to figure out where the issues lie.
Agreed. And so there is a lot of that cross chatter, because on our team, we're really not a product. We're more kind of a function. And so if there's an issue, we have to go to the HV team. If there's something with our plugins, our integration, we have to go to the plugin team. Usually it's pretty easy working with them. We have a product manager that we work with, who's really great, Kilo, and helping us try to move things forward, get enhancements done. If we find things within the product, him working not only with us, but the other teams, and also reaching out, say, if we have to work with Citrix as well. So you're definitely right, Jeff, where you kind of still have that mentality of being able to work with the other teams, communicate, show the problem, and hopefully work together for a resolution to the problem.
And I'd say that, and like you mentioned too, the documentation, I'm sure because you got to be able to clearly write out the issue, the problem, resolution that you may have found, workarounds, things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, for instance, I found an issue the other day, and I got to create a Jira ticket for it, because we use Jira for tracking these things, and go through and explain the problem, provide traces, all that kind of stuff. So
fun.
Yeah. It's amazing the things we learn over the course of our career that become valuable that we don't realize will become valuable. Building that personal skill set of interacting with others and thinking about, okay, how are they going to respond when I say this, and kind of like I'm actually recording the audio version of the new book. So I was actually going over a chapter and found myself mind wandering as I'm reading it. I'm like, this is kind of weird. Like talking about like considering your audience and knowing that just because you have written an email or something like that to one person, that doesn't mean that that's your audience. Your audience is anybody that gets that email forwarded to them, is now your audience. And so consider that ahead of time. So that's a great point, is like developing those skill sets are something that are known. If somebody's knows that you're not ready for that, they're not going to recommend you for a position. They're going to probably just pull you aside and say, maybe consider this, that sort of thing. So those kind of skill sets are really important.
So let's tie this back to Seinfeld. George Costanza, when he's working for the Yankees, he meets with a group of Texans, and they're all swearing up a storm, and George is joining with them. And at one point, he's on the phone with them, and his boss comes walking in, hearing him swearing, and with him, and his boss gets upset and fired. And it's those types of things, kind of like that you're talking about. Is you need to be aware, one, not just of who you're talking to, but also who may also hear or read that conversation as well.
Exactly.
It's good stuff. Well, hey, we're coming up to the end of our time here, but really quick, tell us about the Frontline Chatter podcast and that kind of coming back after a big long hiatus.
Yeah, so the Frontline Chatter podcast was something that myself and Andy Morgan initially started, and then we brought Case Baggerman in, and it's primarily been the three of us. But we've kind of been on hiatus for a while. I have a couple of episodes in the pipeline I need to get published, so look for those soon. And then Rory Monahan has been a special guest co-host on several as well, so he's helped out and he's coming to the fold. But yeah, it's just something that we started doing just to talk with others in the community and vendors as well about their products. So it's just a nice easy chat. We come on kind of like this, if we're not live streaming our video, but it just we get on a Zoom session, we have a nice chat for about an hour, and then post the blog from there and along with the podcast. But it's something fun to do. It's just that with everything going on probably the past year, it's just been a lot of us been busy. Myself making that transition to Nutanix. I know Case as well has been busy, and Andy within his role at VMware too has been busy. So I'm grateful for having Rory help us out a lot, and look forward to some things coming back soon.
Yeah, you can find that at frontlinechatter.com and go visit that. Link is in the show description, things like that. So cool. Any final thoughts for us, Jarian?
No, just thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the time in the chat, and I like the topics that we had talked about. And yep, we have a Tobias coming up too, Roy. So we have Tobias on. We'll have Automate, Steve Greenberg's episode we got to do as well. So thanks for putting it out there, Roy. But yeah, just the main thing, look at community, try to work within the community, try to pay it forward, help others out, and then anything when it comes to your education or learning, make sure it's the best fit to you, and just try to do things that you're continually learning, because things are changing so fast, and it's going to probably get even faster.
Cool. Jarian, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, final thoughts. I typically don't have them, but I did have a little something today. Not so much thoughts, but just kind of throwing out there. DJ, thanks to you, because you've been driving me on a lot of this stuff. I'm going to start ramping up my little YouTube channel again, doing some blogging to get things going again. So pay attention to that. And some of that will be my personal stuff. Some of that will be obviously going to the Thrive IT site. So yeah, that's what I've got. And so thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nick. The journey, man. We're in this together, all of us. We're here.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, I promised something special at the end. And so here it is. We are actually working on a lot of cool things here at Thrive IT and some of our associated kind of network partners, I guess you could say. And want to tell you all about those. I'm going to put up a link on the screen here, but it is a thing we're doing on Monday. If you're watching this live or the replay, hopefully in time, just go to ctxpro.com/91420. And this is a webinar you can either attend live or the replay. Tell you more about it. There's more detail than we can get through today. We'll try and bring that up soon, but I want to kind of go through some of the key areas we're going to be focusing on, based on a lot of these conversations and things like that. So give you some tips as far as the things you should be focused on as far as your career and things like that. And then we have a little special opportunity that you're not going to want to miss. And so make sure you grab a seat for that. They're a little limited, but not horribly. So make sure you register for that. Again, ctxpro.com/91420. I know that sounds like a zip code, but it's not. I mean, it might be a zip code, but that's not why we put it up there. It's actually September 14th, 2020. But quick way to remember that. Anyway, thanks for being with us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. If you can take a quick moment, just hit that subscribe button, and that little bell icon is what tells you when we're going live. In the next few weeks, we're going to try and do even more live activity here on YouTube, trying to get that. Everybody talks about the YouTube algorithm. Whatever. That's a lot of fun too. But honestly, what we're wanting to do is make sure that we are serving you better. And so that's what we're going to be doing in the next few weeks as well. So thanks for being with us again. And hopefully we'll see you next week.